So the pubs have finally, praise the Lord Jesus, reopened, and you went a little bit mental and spent all of your lockdown savings on a bathtub's worth of booze. But then you also went and buggered up your trusty phone by dropping it in a bucket of sangria or unleashing hot vomit fury all over the thing. Well, never fear my friend, because in 2021 you've got a tiny choice of budget-friendly smartphones that are well worth seeking out. Motorola, Xiaomi, Oppo, Nokia and loads of others offer slick, shiny slabs boasting brilliant battery life, flexible camera setups and enough grunt to blaze through games like PubG and Call of Duty, all for a budget under 200 quid. And I'm not even kidding, there's been a torrent of fresh new budget smartphones launched in 2021. I've been reviewing as many of the wee buggers as possible, so here's my roundup of the best budget-friendly smartphones under £200 you can grab yourself in the UK right now that I've personally tried out. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So one of the best new budget smartphones you'll find at this cheapy price point is Motorola's fresh Moto G30, a 159 quid handset that offers a strong everyday experience. Like most budget phones, this is another plastic blower offering little in the way of frills or flair, although it is at least splash resistant if you have yourself a bit of an accident. What you have here is a stock Android experience that's very easy to get along with all those standard features that we know and love, like a dark mode and proper gesture navigation, plus some very worthy Motorola extras like a badass choppy torch effort. The 6.5-inch IPS screen is unfortunately only a 720p res effort, so it's not exactly supremely crisp, but visuals are reasonably punchy and you do get a 90Hz refresh, so everything looks buttery smooth. The Snapdragon 662 chipset can handle fast-paced games like Call of Duty Mobile, no bother, and Motorola's dedicated gaming mode can manage resources out of sight and block pesky notifications from buggering up your concentration. The 5000 mAh battery will happily keep you going all day long, even if you polish the Moto G30 a fair bit, and meanwhile the camera tech is perfectly respectable too. That 64 megapixel primary sensor does typically struggle in stronger low light, but otherwise it can snap some decent looking pics of the fam, although the video mode does top off at full HD resolution. And all the other features that you would hope for and expect from the Moto G30 are present and correct as well, including a good bit of NFC for your contactless payments, you've got some micro SD memory card support to expand the onboard storage, and a tasty bit of headphone jack action too. Overall, a very respectable package indeed. But an alternative budget Motorola smartphone option if you can't get your mitts on the Moto G30 or you'd prefer some slicker looking visuals is the still rather lovable Moto G9 Plus from last year. This is another plastic blow with a stock Android experience and an IPS screen, but this time it's an even more flippin' massive 6.8 incher, and it's a bit of a blinder too, pumping out natural looking Full HD Plus visuals with HDR10 Plus support chucked on top. Although unlike the G30, there's sadly no variable refresh rate to speak of. Performance is pretty smooth thanks to the Snapdragon 730G chipset with that capable Adreno 618 GPU, and Moto's gaming tools once again making for a satisfying PubG or Call of Duty experience. Again, you got a 5000 mAh capacity battery crammed into that plastic fantastic body, and once again it will happily last you the day no matter how much time you spend on your blower, and you got all those other features like the NFC and the micro SD support as you would expect. The package is rounded off by a perfectly decent 64 meg primary camera backed by an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle effort just like the Moto G30, plus you've also got some macro and depth sensor shenanigans. All in all, it's perfectly fine for everyday shooting, even in fairly testing conditions. And even if that didn't quite butter your muffin, well, Motorola has a shagload of other budget-friendly smartphones under that £200 price point in 2021, including the also very mighty indeed Moto G9 Power. This is yet another hand-filling 6.8-inch blower that lacks thrills and excitement, but more than makes up for it with respectable specs for around 170 of your British pounds. Performance is reasonably dependable thanks to once again that Snapdragon 662 platform, backed by 4 gigs of RAM. You can get stuck into some light gaming if you want to blow off some steam by blowing off someone else's skull. And of course, with a name like Power, you would expect some pretty supreme battery life out of this thing, and that's definitely a winner here. The Moto G9 Power rocks a 6000 milliamp capacity battery that'll easily keep you going for a full day, even if you're basically never off the damn thing, and it'll last you 2 full days if you don't go too nuts. The G9 Power is fine for media streaming, although the IPS screen once again drops from Full HD to 720p res, while the stereo speaker setup has also been culled, but thankfully not that headphone jack. Meanwhile, the triple lens rear camera, spearheaded by a 64 megapixel sensor, is unsurprisingly limited, and you do lose the Plus model's 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle shooter, although the Moto G9 Power can still take good looking photos in respectable lighting, helped along by Motorola's AI smarts. Alternatively, for 10 bob less, you can bag yourself the Moto G9 Play, which at just 6.4 inches is a bit of a blessing for more stubby troll-like fingered people like myself, although the battery capacity and the camera tech are also scaled back. Now, another brand that offers straight-laced stock Android smartphones for a budget-friendly price point in 2021 is Nokia, and the fresh new Nokia 5.4 is a respectable package for just 150 quid. This 6.4-inch blower suffers from standard Nokia tropes like the fat lip down below, harbouring some needless branding, and of course that always pointless assistant button. But this dusk model is rather fetching in a moody emo kind of way. We're still waiting on that Android 11 upgrade, unfortunately, which is rather grating to say the least, but that should eventually tick through, and then supposedly we'll be getting an Android 12 update once that's available as well, plus 3 years of security updates just for an added bit of reassurance. You've got NFC support here in the UK and the dual SIM support as well, plus a separate microSD slot to expand that storage. Meanwhile, the IPS screen is a mere 720p panel, but it's fine for streaming YouTube or browsing the old internet. Powering proceedings is the Snapdragon 662 chipset again, and once again this is fine for gaming on the go, while the 4000 mAh battery is near impossible to drain in a single day unless you really bloody punish this thing. And last up, that 48 megapixel rear primary sensor was absolutely fine for your everyday pics of the family and all that good stuff, but the video recording was a bit of a mess, and lots of focal popping and other issues like that. So I'd say if you want to shoot lots of home movies of the Sprogs doing cute stuff, then you might want to look elsewhere. Personally, I'd rather grab myself an Oppo A53, which costs as little as 130 bob in 2021. This phone is a bit of a superstar, offering a smooth everyday experience, around 2 days of battery life between charges, and all the standard stuff like NFC and that expandable storage. The display is a mere HD effort once again, but it's not bad at all for kicking back with some YouTube or whatever, and impressively you do have a 90Hz max refresh rate too, not to mention a stereo speaker setup and strong audio chops. The Oppo A53 is still stock on creaky old Android 10 at the time I shot this, at least it was for me, and not everyone will delight in that clunky old Colour OS launcher either. But the Snapdragon 460 chipset and 120Hz touch response rate meant I stood a reasonable chance against the hordes of unwashed school kids when stumbling my way through online slogfests. And that 13 megapixel primary camera does a decent job of daily snaps, certainly for this asking price. Moving on, and of course it's impossible to round up the best budget smartphones in 2021 without a hot bit of Xiaomi action, especially as the rather bloody brilliant Poco X3 NFC is still one of the best blows around at this price point. The name's still a bit clunky, but the Poco X3 NFC says that the kind of specs and features you usually find for about 100 quid more. Let's start with that gorgeous 6.7-inch Full HD IPS screen, which boasts HDR10 support and tops off at a whopping 120Hz refresh rate, something you don't even find on a lot of flagship phones. Movies sound good over the stereo speakers, and you've got a headphone jack for plugging in and enjoying proper high-res audio. This is one of the first smartphones to pack in Qualcomm's Snapdragon 732G platform, so you can absolutely blaze through games like Call of Duty and PubG no worries, especially as Xiaomi found space for 6 gigs of RAM in this plastic wonder. And the Poco X3 NFC rounds off its general awesomeness with a nice tasty 5000 mAh battery and a 64 megapixel primary camera that can capture decent looking shots in ample conditions. If you can't quite stretch up to that near £200 asking price, well, Poco still has you kinda covered with the reasonably good Poco M3. Despite costing closer to the £100 mark, you still get a Full HD Plus resolution display, this 6.53-inch beast, which is definitely commendable. The snazzy yellow version is certainly eye-catching, and you get the same Snapdragon 662 chipset that was packed inside of the Moto G9 Play and Power, so gaming on titles like Call of Duty and PubG is all good. But one of my favourite bits of the Poco M3 is that 6000 mAh battery, a match for the Moto G9 Power, so again you can punish this thing as much as you like, it'll keep you going all day long, no sweat. The Poco M3 can be rather quirky at times however, and the camera is very basic at best, but overall it is worth that price. And also, as a heads up, Xiaomi often has random little sales and discounts on its smartphones on mi.com, so definitely keep an eye on that if you're after a budget smartphone. Quite often the likes of the Mi 10T Lite will creep creep under that £200 price point. Now, it's definitely still one of my favourite budget 5G smartphones right now. I managed to grab it for 190 quid in one of those sales, so yeah, definitely well worth having a squint at. But of course, one Xiaomi smartphone that you won't have to wait to be discounted is the Redmi 9, which is a very respectable alternative to that Poco M3. This 6.5-inch phone is a lovable beast, pumping out full HD visuals and lasting for yonks with its similarly huge battery. You don't get the 120Hz refresh rate or the HDR support or the stereo speaker setup, while the performance can be a wee bit stuttery as well. But the Redmi 9 can handle everyday life without much of a grumble, and it will suit any users on a stricter budget. Now, this sort of price point, you will also find the occasional Samsung Galaxy A series branded smartphone as well, which might seem quite tempting. I haven't personally tested most of these out, unfortunately, because Samsung isn't really particularly keen on sending out samples of its budget handsets. What I can tell you though is definitely steer well clear of the Galaxy A12, which is rather clunky and juddery no matter what you're up to, and definitely weak sauce compared with a lot of the other rivals in this best budget phone roundup. So that right there is my personal pick of the best cheapy handsets you can grab yourself right now in spring 2021. Of course, these smartphones I've all personally tested and reviewed, so I might have missed off your own personal favourite. Definitely feel free to call me a twat bag down in the comments and clue me in as to what your selection would have been. Definitely go check out my full reviews of any of these smartphones if any of them have particularly tickled your fancy, and please do poke subscribe, ding that notifications bell, all that other YouTube shenanigans, and have yourselves a fantastic rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.